We haven't heard the regular theme as much lately because we've been doing mini-series shows, which is fine. Obviously, a very varied program, as you know, with the 400 plus episodes we have under our belt. And in line with that, we cover different subject matters like we'll do tonight. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this episode 407 of the Mike the New Haven podcast. This past Friday was supposed to be 407. We had a cancellation, so it kind of pushes 407 up, which is more than fine by me. Like I said, we got somebody pretty good coming on, and I'm excited about this program because it's an important conversation like him and I were just talking about off air. You'll hear from him momentarily. But the previous episode was a different twist on our ESU miniseries, the E-Men, inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit, because this gentleman served in ESU, just not NYPD ESU. He was Corrections ESU. And think about what those guys have to go through. And mind you, as him and I talked about, they're doing all of that work without a gun. So having to do that work with some of the most violent people you can think of inside those prison cells without a sidearm, it's not for the faint of heart. Bob Cower was the guest, and that was a really, really fun show to do with him as we got to look inside of what those guys do. And again, hats off. And we'll start to get more guys, like I said last episode, just besides the NYPD ESU guys from surrounding areas, because I know those guys got great stories to tell as well. Tonight's guest is a returning one. You'll hear from him momentarily, but first things first, a couple ads. And of course, we got my friend in the chat, so we'll run his ad first. And that is Mr. Billy Ryan. The Mike the New Haven podcast is proudly sponsored and supported by the Ryan Investigative Group. If you need an elite PI, look no further than the elite Ryan Investigative Group, which is run by retired NYPD detective Bill Ryan, a 20-year veteran of the department who served the majority of his career in the Detective Bureau, most notably in the Arson and Explosion Squad. So if you need a PI to handle anything from fraud, legal services, and anything else that you might require, contact Bill at 347-417-1610. Again, 347-417-1610. Reach him at his website or the email that you see here. Again, if you need a PI, look no further than Bill Ryan and the Ryan Investigative Group, a proud supporter and sponsor of the Mike the New Haven podcast. Proud supporter indeed. We'll run the other ads later, but in the spirit of the World Baseball Classic and, of course, the soon-to-be 2026 regular season being upon us, how about a word from producer Victor's podcast, The Chop Seat? Baseball fans, if you bleed Braves country red and blue, this one's for you. Check out the Chop Seat podcast hosted by Victor Mignetis. Every week, Victor dives deep into all things Atlanta Braves and Major League Baseball, from game recaps and trade rumors to player spotlights and the latest league news. Whether it's breaking down the lineup, debating pitching rotations, or talking postseason chances, the Chop Seat gives you honest takes, sharp analysis, and a fan's true passion for the game. So if you're looking for your go-to Braves and MLB podcast, pull up a chair and join the conversation. Subscribe to the Chop Seat today on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Because in Braves country, there's always room at the Chop Seat. I think Venezuela and Italy play tonight, with the winner, of course, advancing to play the United States in the final, who just beat the Dominican Republic by a score of 2-1. Now, of course, like I said, getting into tonight's show, if there's not many good things about my current generation, but one thing that is good about our current generation is that we're very open about mental health. And mental health, obviously, as you've heard me talk about on the show before, is wealth, especially if you're a first responder. And like I was talking about with my guest and friend, who I'll introduce momentarily off air, it's not just something that affects law enforcement, although we're going to focus primarily on law enforcement tonight. It affects the fire service. It certainly affects EMS. It affects dispatch. It affects anybody involved in any form of public safety. And that is not only just mental health, but specifically tonight, and it'll get a little heavy, but for good reason. It's an important conversation, albeit a hard one. Police suicide, and not just, active duty members taking their own lives, but retired members too. How to track it, how to stop it. It's something we should get into. It's something that for many, many years was taboo to discuss. Not so much now. And I think the right guy is certainly back on the program tonight to discuss. You remember him a few years ago when he came on to talk about his career. I'm happy to have him back. Former NYPD chief and retired Yonkers police commissioner Ed Hartnett back on the program. And even though it's a subject matter that, like we said, is heavy, it's good to see you again, my friend. How you been?
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Hey, first of all, thank you. Thank you for giving me the time to talk about this sad, tragic, and important topic. And second of all, congrats. Kudos. I mean, over 400 episodes. Good for you, man. You got the perseverance. You got the patience. You got the tenacity. Good for you. Good for you. I'm happy for you.
Thank you. And like I said before, it's the guys that really keep the show going, the audience, and obviously the guests and the amount of people that recommend me guests all the time. We've been able to avoid stagnation, I think, on this program because of, in large part, the audience that I have, and certainly producer Victor is a big aid in that as well. So it's hard to believe because I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago that you came on, and so much has happened since. You've certainly been busy, like we were talking about off air, and we'll get into it. It'll be an extension of what we were just bringing up because, like we were saying, and I'll let you kind of take the ball from here. We track so much nowadays, especially with AI and the different tools that exist to track pretty much any category you can think of, however serious or depending on what it is, however silly it may be. This is anything but silly. And yet, even now in 2026, not 1996, there's seemingly not enough to track it.
It is frustrating. By the way, Mike, since I last came on the show, you still have no gray hair, so I hate you. But I'll get into this. Again, thanks for your time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's frustrating. It's vexing. And just for some background, I serve on a IACP, which is the International Association of Chiefs of Police. Mm-hmm. I serve on a committee. It's called the Private Sector Liaison Section. And as the name implies, it's about partnership between police and security business and local business. And, it's a great outfit. We've done stuff on like workplace violence, active shooter, good group of people, kind of a think tank. And it's a cross section of retired people like me, active chiefs, private sector security experts, and a lot of good ideas go back and forth. So sadly, about 2023, a friend who quote unquote had everything to live for commit suicide. And he was one of the big shocks because some of the other ones, sadly, there was some issues going on in their life, and it was still a shock. But this was, to all of us, it just blew us away. And I started asking, like, what's going on? Like, how big is this problem? Because right now, I know, sadly, last week, another one occurred, sadly, in my beloved Yonkers Police Department. Now I know 6 people that have committed suicide years after they retired. Jeez. And it's starting, even, like, I had a precinct narcotics team in the mid 80s in the 46th precinct. So I had 7 good, hardworking cops. And years later, 2 of them, years after they retired, committed suicide. So I started saying, what's going on here? And I do a little digging. And listen, folks, the only time I'm the smartest guy in the room is when I'm by myself. So I started looking into this a little bit, and there's no real tracking of it. It's a problem that's out there, and we don't know the scope of it, because nobody knows where it's happening. Because a scenario I use a lot is, I'll say the NYPD. So an NYPD guy serves 25, 30 years. He retires. He usually starts a second career somewhere. Maybe he relocates. So he relocates to Florida, Texas, wherever. Starts a new job, starts a new life. And 5, 10 years later, he or she commits suicide. And again, who knows about it? The pension section, they do a great job, but I call the pension section and they hear about it anecdotally. Everything is anecdotal. There's no like the military has a horrible suicide problem, but they have the clearinghouse of the Veterans Administration. So there's a pot that all this info goes into. They can track it probably. We can't. We have no similar pot, no similar clearinghouse in policing. So, and the way I kind of look at it too is, when I first came out of the job in 1979, there really wasn't much support system when it came to counseling and suicide prevention. Since then, the profession of policing throughout the country has done a pretty good job, a damn good job, in identifying things, red flags, early intervention. There's things in place that I'm sure have prevented a lot of people from taking this horrible last step. But that's not the same with retirees. So when you have an active duty member, for example, they have the normal stress of daily life, everything that goes into the stressful life of anybody. Add to that the stress of policing. Add to that the horrible things that they've probably seen throughout their career. And then add to that the easy access to a firearm. And that combination right there often leads to a tragedy. But on the positive side, they have the support system of their comrades, their friends, the locker room. They have, off duty and on duty. They have supervisors who now understand more about this topic. They see the red flags. They may jump in and say, This guy needs help. So now you got the retiree 5-10 years later. He still has the normal stresses of everyday life. He or she still has the stresses of policing that are still maybe having a residual effect on them. He or she has seen the horrible things that cops see all the time across the country. He still has access to a gun most of the time, but yet now on the downside, that support system that he had in the locker room and the precinct and the detective squad and the ESU unit is not there anymore. He may still be in touch with some of those guys, but it's not the daily support that we're used to. And also, there's no supervision anymore. So there's nobody looking for those red flags anymore, because now the guy works for, ABC insurance company, and it's just not the same. So, as I said, I don't want to keep going on and on here, but I think that
no, by all means, go right ahead. It's your show.
It's a bigger problem, I think, than people realize. So I'm sure somebody at home is going, all right, so what are you doing about it, Hartnett? So right now, what I'm doing is I'm raising awareness. Again, I'm not looking to be the poster boy for this. I mean, I want to do it. I want to get it going as best I can. There's resources out there that I'm tapping into. I'm doing a lot of these shows, Mike, and thank you again, because I want to get that word out there. I actually want to seek information. So anybody out there, and again, the treatment programs, it's all good. Like, people have called me about treatment programs. Really, that's the cart before the horse, really. I mean, the treatment programs are great, but we need to know where it's happening, how it's happening, who's happening to. Are there hot spots? Break it down, like almost like a CompStat, where you're looking at everything, analyzing everything, and seeing what's going on here. And, I think it's I was hoping it would be not that big a problem, but the more I hear, the more I talk to people, it's a problem. It's a bigger problem than people realize. If I know 6 people that killed themselves after they retired, I'm sure if you had a room full of cops, but especially retired cops, and say, raise your hand if you know one person that did it, I'm sure a lot of hands would go up. I'm sure a lot of hands would go up to the audience right now. So
yeah,
I'm gonna stick with this as best I can. I mentioned before, I think there may be a place, my wife actually told me, and she's smarter than me, that maybe artificial intelligence has a way to chip in here. Like, for example, if AI can run all the suicides in the country, and then maybe cross-reference those suicides with former police officer or police pensions or something, but that crossroad right there might be the place where we could start. And then I think maybe a think tank, like there's great think tanks, like the Police Executive Research Forum. I'm a member for 25 years. It's called PERF for short. And PERF might be a place where they can really, really help with this. But there's think tanks in Washington, D.C. There's the cops office. I look at some of the groups that I've joined over the years that I'm a dues-paying member of. I'm going to tap into them, like the FBI National Academy Associates. I'm looking at maybe the IACP would maybe compile a survey to send out to all their chiefs and just say, hey, even if it's anecdotal, have you had members, commit suicide in the last 5 years that retired 5 years ago or more? Things like that. I'll go on, TV if I have to. I did a show with Gary McCarthy out in Chicago last week. Again, just to bang the drum, just to get the word out there. And again, to your audience, if you have an idea that you think might help, if you have a resource that might help. I'm not in the fundraising thing right now. It's like, again, I'm not a therapist. I'm not trained in employee assistance programs. I'm a retired police chief. I'm a retired police commissioner. It's something that I'd love to see. If we could prevent a couple of these from happening, I could feel better about it. And then if some group, some organization put some resources into this, maybe some police foundation, maybe some private sector guys want to put a consortium together and throw some money at this problem. I think I can step away and say, guys, you got this now. Let's go. But we're not there yet. We're a long way from that. But I'm hoping that getting this kind of exposure and going with a large audience like yours might be helpful.
And I appreciate that. And we're talking with Ed Hartnett, a friend of mine, former NYPD chief and former Yonkers police commissioner, back on the show. You may remember, if you're a longtime viewer of this program, he was originally on a few years ago as we look back on his career. He's back tonight talking about mental health and law enforcement. And you hit on something I was going to bring up, and I'm glad you did, which is why retired officers may fall through the cracks. You mentioned it, and you said it perfectly. I can't add much to it than what you already said, which is they don't have much. Well, I don't want to say they don't have anything, but like you said, the support system on the job is a heck of a lot different once you retire. And the thing is, I don't want to say it's out of sight, out of mind per se, because that would sound too cruel. But think about it. I mean, you don't just, in terms of what you see as a first responder, in tonight's case, talking specifically about police officers, it's not like when you march down to the pension section and say, okay, I'm done. Here's my badge. Here's the paperwork. I'm officially retired. The trauma just turns off. And you walk out one police plaza and everything you see, like Men in Black, they just drain it from you and all of a sudden it never happened. You take it with you for the rest of your life. Could be a really bad shooting, could be a homicide, a suicide, whatever it is, a really bad MVA. It stays up here and it stays up here until your dying days. And so how to cope with that and the mechanisms that exist out there, it's tough because talking about it is not easy. Opening up about the fact that not only is it bothering you, but it's pushing to the brink. It takes a lot to come forward and do that. And on a B level too, who can you reach out to? When you're on the job, there's PAPA, for example, there's peer programs now, there's counselors now. That even though guys are still members of the union, when they call it a day and they start to collect their pensions, it's not as readily available. And sometimes picking up that phone is the hardest thing. And so even if you have retiree group chapters out there, in Florida, the Carolinas, wherever it may be, I can understand, even though we certainly don't encourage it, I can understand, unfortunately, why guys end up feeling alone.
Absolutely. And you hit on it in the very beginning. You talked about your generation is more open about it. They're more susceptible to receiving counseling. They'll open up to their friends and their colleagues about it. When I came on, and even after that, even though there's less of a stigma, it still was viewed as, it's a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's not macho. It's whatever it is. I'm a cop. I'm tough.
Right.
I'm supposed to be able to take it. And I get it. And listen, when I was in the job in NYPD and Yonkers, I had situations where I had to say, stop. And it's traumatic. It's traumatic when when a boss says, I'm taking your firearms, I'm going to get you some help. Now, I hardly ever had anybody come back and say, Chief, thank you so much. I mean, there was resentment. There was, you're hurting me. You're punishing me. But you know what? I knew for the good of that person and maybe the good of his family. You've heard some tragedies too, where somebody sadly takes out their family and then they do themselves. So
right.
It's horrible. And one thing also, and I'm guilty of it as well. When members are retiring, we often do what we call the exit interview. And with all due respect, most of the time it's BS. It's a kind of a shoot the breeze session. Hey, what are you doing? How you doing? How much time do you have on? Blah, blah, blah. And they'll talk about his pension. But I'm thinking maybe that exit interview is a way to at least offer, like, hey, before you leave, would you like to do an interview? Now, a lot of guys will say, what do I want to do? I'm out of the job. But, we took a psychological to come on the job. What's wrong with taking one to leave the job? I don't know.
I like that.
It sounds very pat and very trite. But at the same time, and I'm not saying you can make it mandatory, but you know what? I plan on talking to some union leaders and maybe present it to them that, would your guys be willing to at least think about an exit interview that would include a psychological exam? Just walking out the door. And if they saw something, it's like, it's not punitive. You'd still get your good guy letter, all that, unless you tied it to the good guy letter, which I know the unions wouldn't like. But something walking out the door, at the very least, that shows that we give a damn about you still. And maybe part of that exit interview and part of that offer would be, even if you don't take the psychological exam, you can always call us if you have problems. At least show that you care, that even if you move to Georgia, you can still call this number if you're not feeling right. And just like it, they can call Papa, you can call whoever, but just so that they know that somebody gives a damn about them.
Yeah, absolutely. I see your question, Christian Williams. I didn't forget about it. I'm going to hit it in a little bit, but it's a good question. So I didn't want you to think I was ignoring it. I'm certainly not. And the other aspect to it too is that's the thing too. You said something very important. Unfortunately, and you get this. I mean, you got 32 years of law enforcement experience between both places. Guys, even now, still, and you see comments about this when mental health comes up now, even in 2026, guys still feel like it's punitive because there's a mistrust there. They don't trust the job. And like you said, there were instances where you had to step in as a chief and later as a commissioner, and for a guy's own safety or a girl's own safety, take their guns away and kind of go through that step to get them the help they needed. There's that resentment. Why am I going to open up? The officer in question may think, if they're just going to take my guns and make me look like I'm less than, so that's where it puts them in a situation where, even though I wish they would see beyond that, they feel trapped. And even though being a cop is not necessarily their whole identity, It's a big part of who they are. And guys tend to feel emasculated, rightly or wrongly, when something like that happens. And sometimes they view that, again, rightly or wrongly, as a massive blow. And what we don't want to, and it's such a delicate balancing act because you're trying to come at it with the right intentions. But at the same time, in some cases, sadly, we've seen talking about it openly. That's the thing. That's the last straw for a guy that breaks and pushes him over the edge. But and that's the thing. We have to curtail that. Just not seeing it as punitive, seeing it as a bigger step or a small step towards fixing a bigger problem.
Yeah, and the department and the profession in general has gotten better at it. But it used to be, my experience at NYPD, when a member his guns were removed and he's put on modified assignment, very often that lingered for a year or more, even longer than that. And so this guy's career, in theory, in actuality, has been derailed. He was looking for an interview. He was getting an interview to the detective bureau. He was going to go to ESU. He was getting an interview for narcotics. Now, boom, that's all on hold. And then the hierarchy, especially the old guard way back when, they were reluctant to give the guns back because they were thinking, if I give him his guns back in a year and he does something crazy, then it's going to come back on me. Mm-hmm. So they were like, yeah, well, what's the harm? Leave him without his guns. So this poor guy would be in limbo sometimes even for a somewhat minor infraction or a minor incident. And so it was career altering, certainly. And then, I did a lot of interviews and you'd see in the guy's personnel record, placed on modified assignment, 5 years earlier, 10 years earlier, you'd have to ask him about it. So it did come back sometimes to haunt people. And it was a factor in people not coming forward. Papa changed a lot of that, which is great. But still, it's a process where people are reluctant to come forward, and fellow officers are reluctant to come forward. Like, mm-hmm. I'm not gonna rat out Joe and say I think he's losing his mind because that hurts him. But then, sadly, if that guy winds up committing suicide, now that guy's carrying all that guilt around. He should have said something. Mm-hmm. So, and I've talked to people in that situation over the years, and they feel terrible. I should have done something. I should have said something. I should have stopped them. Right. And it's too late then.
Right, and exactly, and then there's always that constant thing of what if, and it creates another kind of catch-22 for guys. And you put, and Vinny, I see your comment too, and I'll get to that momentarily after I mention this. We had two watershed moments in recent years. 2019, one guy's bad enough. We had 10 guys in a single calendar year make that devastating choice. Two guys that worked in the same precinct. There was Kevin Price. And then later that same month, there was Johnny Rios. And those two knew each other, and I think they were close from what I've read. And both those guys took their own lives. So that, and then a few years later, I didn't know Roy Richter personally, but I knew of Roy Richter. I was shocked. I did not, and I think anybody that knew Roy, two beautiful girls, beautiful wife, smart guy, a lawyer, an NYPD captain, I don't think anybody saw that coming with Roy. And, if those moments didn't collectively make us say, respectively, kind of like we talked about in the beginning, we've got to do something about this because Roy was retired for a number of years too, then what does? But then again, it's not only because it's uncomfortable to talk about too. People get frustrated when they're trying to throw stuff against the wall to see what sticks. What can we do? How can we track this? Just the frustration and not being able to have a concrete step-by-step plan, especially for first responders who pride themselves on always having a plan, that kind of leads to stagnation in the discussion too, I find.
Yeah, Roy was a friend. Roy was my union president. Brilliant. One of the best labor leaders I've ever met. Yeah. And ironically, Roy was very proactive with the membership in preventing suicide. And sadly, he wound up succumbing to it. So, can it happen to anyone? Well, Roy, a great man. Roy is an example that, you never know. It could happen. Right. And, we mourn him to this day because he was a great person.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I go back to 2019. He hadn't retired yet, but Chief Silks was widely regarded in the NYPD. He was very beloved in the NYPD.
He was a friend too. He was a good guy. I chuckled because him and I had some amusing conversations over the years. He was a very good guy.
Yeah. And sadly, he succumbed to it as well. So let's get to Christian Williams's comment. And I think, listen, this is a show tonight. We'll put your opinions out there, whatever you feel. If there's a different perspective you have, like Vinny has, and it's not disrespectful, but I value what Vinny has to say. He's a friend too, former ESU guy in his own right. I'll get to your comment, Vinny, but first, Christian Williams with a good question. He says, "Hi, Commissioner. Do you know what the legislative government side of this issue looks like? Are governments and politicians aware of this issue? And if not, what can be done to change that?"
Yeah, thank you, Christian. I don't, I don't. This is really in its early stages. I would love to get some elected officials involved in this some way, and maybe get this. And I'll go speak to anybody. So if they wanted me to come and talk to somebody, some elected officials, I would love to, because anything I can do to raise awareness would be great. But yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I'll seek them out if I can. And again, I don't want to embarrass anybody, but if people don't want to listen, I'm Irish and I'm stubborn. So I'll keep banging the drum.
And there you go. And Vinny Manco, who finished out in JTTF, but he was previously an emergency service, and he was previously a guest in this program. He says, I disagree with the exit interview. Cops will not do it. Kind of like what we talked about. He said there should be more interaction with the unions and fraternal organizations, kind of like what you were touching on earlier, too. Look at ESU. We have REMA. It's not perfect, but it does help. Nothing is 100%. Look at the 9/11 World Trade Center program. They always ask, do you want to speak to anyone? I always decline. It's frowned upon or not macho to ask for help. And what did we just say? Even now, even with the progress made in discussing it, there's still that, even if it's not as prevalent as years past, there's still that stigma. And thanks, Vinny, for that comment. Excellent
Thank you,
observation.
man. Yeah, listen, I hear you. We agree to disagree on some of it, but I hear you. It's a factor. Again, I just did my Mount Sinai program just last week, and thank God I don't think I need help, but I check off that box all the time. Thanks a lot, but no thanks. So I think a lot of it happens as well, even in an exit interview. But I'm thinking if a more substantive exit interview took place, I think it might, even if it prevents one person, you never know. But I think the key part I mentioned was, maybe I didn't stress it enough, was at least letting that guy know when he walks out the door, you can still call us.
Would it help? Because, I mean, unions are a big part of this, and there's several within the NYPD. You got the captains, the Detective Bureau, the PBA, certainly the SBA. Would it help if maybe, not phasing out union leaders? Obviously, they have to be a part of the negotiation process too, as with anything. But maybe sending cops to the table first and saying, hey, you guys are on the street. You guys are living it. Union leaders, and this is not knocking them, it's just the nature of how their operations work. They're not on the street as much because they're doing union stuff. So they wouldn't know the day-to-day compared to someone who's living the day-to-day because they're doing the union stuff. If you put cops at the table first that are living it day in and day out, and you ask them point blank, hey, lay it out. How would you want this done? There's no repercussions. We're here to help you. Just give me the step-by-step of how you think this should be done. And you get a consensus, broad opinion from across those different unions represented, or those who are represented by the different SBAs, LBAs, PBAs, so on and so forth. Is that going to lead us anywhere? Or and if so, how do you think we should go about doing that?
I think so. And I think you phrased it well. Like you're not saying that the union leaders are out of touch, but they're full excusal. And if you talk to any union leaders, they're constantly going to disciplinary hearings and stuff like that. So I think getting some of the rank and file at various command levels and at various types of commands, getting them to open up about it and come suggestions. Like I said, I got some of my best ideas when I said any questions before a narcotics raid or something like that. And, the guy would view as maybe the least qualified guy in the whole team would raise his hand and have a question that would maybe save the day. So I'm a big fan of getting input from everybody. So I like your idea a lot. And, there's some really good union leaders out there, former and current. Like I go back with Bob Ganley. He was the number 2 in the SBA. He was also, Jimmy O'Neill made him Deputy Commissioner of Employee Relations. He's very plugged in. So I'm tapping into him. Mike Palladino is a classmate of mine from the academy, and he still does some work for the DEA. And there's others too out there that I can tap into, but I really want to get their input on what to do and how to do it.
Yeah. And I think there's organizations out there too that track this. One in particular, I'm going to shout them out, and guys in the chat are probably familiar with them. Beyond the Badge. I don't know if you're familiar with their work at all.
I've heard of them, yeah.
Yeah, but Beyond the Badge tracks police suicides and often renders assistance to the families that have been left behind by the responder who's not with us anymore because they tragically committed suicide. And even just that, I mean, Beyond the Badge has done so much good for the family, so much good in prevention as well, that I think even reaching out to them, even if they're not directly affiliated with a given agency, in this case, the NYPD, just saying, hey, look at the work that you do is incredible. What's working for you guys? Why do you have such a good, positive effect with outreach? What are the things that you've implemented? Getting those different perspectives and maybe even bringing them further into the conversation, saying, hey, if you don't, because I think O'Neill did this when he was commissioner, when we had the terrible 2019. Hey, you don't have to come forward. If you want to stay anonymous, you can. Here are the programs you can reach out to. If we incorporated some of those outside organizations that focus on mental health and say, hey, if you don't want to talk to us, fine, no worries, no sweat, talk to them. We'll never know about it. I think that would help guys too, because maybe it eliminates the stigma too.
Yeah, and I've heard of them, but I will reach out to them. Thank you. And also across the country, there's 1013 clubs.
Yes.
And most of them are NYPD guys, but and people look at them like, oh yeah, they're a bunch of old buffs that want to talk around, tell war stories, and only half of them are true. But you know what? I'm a member of one, and they're very plugged in, and they like, and that's part of that camaraderie thing we talked about before. And I plan on talking to some of them, and I want to see if there's any kind of national 1013 club, even the FBI Academy. Like I mentioned, I know the guy who's the president right now, Billy Carbone, a great guy. And if I ask Billy that if I can put out a blast to all his members, I mean, there's thousands of people that are members of the FBI National Academy Associates, and some of them are still in law enforcement. A lot of them are still retired, and they could help spread the word. So again, it's really about just spreading the word. Another analogy I like to comment on, and it might be a corny analogy, but
I don't care.
Years ago, 30 years ago more, the FBI, because back then, say, there was serial killers, and these guys were killing people, killing women usually across the country, and nobody was connecting the dots. So the VICAP program, the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, started saying, okay, let's all share information. And they put this VICAP system together, and now you could see patterns of say, serial killers. I'm thinking in a similar way, if somebody figured out a way to track these things, just like VICAP, we could start looking at hotspots, looking at there's a pattern here. This part of the country seems to have a lot of them. You'll see it probably in Florida because a lot of retirees go to Florida. So something like VICAP, if somebody would jump in and say, let's track it like that, then they could say, okay, clearly there's a problem here. Let's do something about it.
Yeah. You brought up the Comstat analogy earlier, which I thought was perfect, because what was Jack Maple and Bill Bratton doing in transit in the 1980s and early 90s and later the NYPD together?
Yeah.
They literally, it started, as I talk about often in the program, it started with a map where he was using pins, because the technology was not as prevalent back then, and saying, okay, there's a lot of robberies on this subway line. There's a lot of fights that go on this subway line, on this platform. And they went about allocating the appropriate resources to get out there and prevent those things from happening, which led to a massive crime drop, 27% to be exact, as Bill Bratton will often tell you.
Oh, yeah.
That being said, it's if we had the same thing here, where not only certain part of the country, let's focus on age groups too. Who's more likely for it? We know men are more likely. Those are well-proven, unfortunately, scientific studies that highlight that. But what age group? In radio, you often hear it back, more so in the 90s with, when Howard Stern was prevalent, when Imus in the Morning was prevalent. The demo that they would always focus on was 25 to 54 aged males. It's kind of the same thing here, although on a much more important level. Are 25-year-olds more susceptible to it compared to 55 or 65-year-olds? And if we keep track of that in such a condensed form, which we have the tools now to do, I think that's a big help as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I still do some work with Bill Bratton on some police assessment projects, and I'm also tapping into him as well. So
good.
Again, he's a rock star in policing still.
Yes.
And somebody like him, he has a lot more gravitas than I do. If somebody like him talked about this a little bit, it would also be a big help.
Absolutely. Anybody that can, really. Steve Stefanakis, I see you're just going back to what Vinny had mentioned. Steve adds to it via LinkedIn. He's a 10-truck guy in emergency. My issue with the 9/11 World Trade Center mental health psychologist, it's care without concern. It's just part of their program and info gathering / stat compiling, not real treatment for those that need it. And that brings up an interesting point, not just with that program. And hey, Steve, I got to swing down this summer and see you at 10-truck, buddy. I miss you. Is that you want that connection. And I think one of the things that was mentioned to me, this is on the fire service side, after 9/11, when guys obviously across the board, at whether they be police, fire, EMS, so on and so forth, needed to talk to people after what they saw down there that day and the days afterwards. What helped on the fire service side is that guys who had been through tragedies where they lost colleagues in the line of duty were the peer counselors. And guys have talked about how much that helped them because the people that they were talking to understood exactly and could relate perfectly to what guys were going through. The 1013 clubs are a starting point, but I think if we had a unit like that, I know the FDNY has it. I don't know what the extent of it in the NYPD. I know Papa touches on it, where not only can you have a guy who was on the job to talk to you about this, who understands terminologies, can understand the traumas, but a guy that's been through some really dark crap and can understand exactly what you're talking about because he or she lived it. Maybe that can go a long way towards prevention too.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I'm throwing a lot of stuff against the wall and hopefully a lot of it sticks.
Yeah.
Horrible analogy, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, listen. And again, that's why I'm glad you're here. I'm glad that we're getting into it tonight because, it's an important subject matter. And we talked about off air. I had a friend a couple of years ago, and I still don't know why to this day, like we were talking about. great guy, beautiful family. I know his father, I know his brother too, and he shot himself a couple years ago. It'll be 2 years this summer, and I still can't understand it, and nobody can, like we talked about earlier with Roy. There was something I asked you about off the air. I'll ask about it on the air now too, since it rolls in perfectly. I mentioned, just for the audience, when Ed and I were spitballing prior to going live, that I get why police agencies may not report it when a member dies by suicide, or even other public safety agencies as well, for that matter. Because my point was, and you tell me what you guys think, if someone out there is struggling already and they find out someone died, and not only did they die, but they did that, potentially it may encourage them to say, well, if that person had the guts to do it, then you know what, then I should just follow through with it too. Obviously terrible. We don't want that to happen. But I feel like it's also a disservice, because if we keep it hush hush, and this is another catch-22, I don't think that helps either. So, I mean, from your perspective, again, you're way more plugged in than me. Why do you think, this is just not an NYPD thing, it's across the board, why do you think most agencies don't openly speak about it when it happens, and report on it when it happens?
I think I just don't think, to my original point, I don't think they know as much as we think they do. I mean, I reported to the police commissioner for a while. I reported to 2 different first deputies. I reported to the chief of department. I never saw that on those high lofty floors in 1TP, that kind of mentality. I don't think they would be afraid of reporting it. And I don't think they worry about triggering others to do the same thing. I just don't think they don't know about it. Like I said, when I talk to good friends out at the pension section, it's anecdotal. All they know is that there's a death certificate, maybe it says suicide, whatever, and okay, stop sending the pension check. So it's really unknown, I think, for the most part, unless somebody says, hey, did you hear about so and so? But there's no stat, there's no report saying, okay, add this to the number of suicides year to date in this. It's not happening. I'm hoping someday it gets to that, so at least we can start identifying this problem a little bit better.
Yeah, because I mean, again, you see it posted on Facebook, you see it posted on different social media sites, but it's all, like you said, and you've used the word multiple times tonight, anecdotal. And when a guy retires, like we talked about at the top of the show, I don't want to say it's out of sight, out of mind, but when a guy moves away or a gal moves away and they're not around in the forefront, you just send the pension section check out from the pension section. You're not keeping track as actively because they're not there doing the job anymore. And it's easy to forget. And even with these retirement organizations or 1013 clubs that exist, it's easier for guys, especially if maybe they weren't that social to begin with. And some people are like that, not knocking them. You have people that are extroverted, you have people that are introverted. Guys like that can mask it and hide it really well. And when you're living alone with your thoughts, sometimes, as a guy that's been there in the past, I'm open about it. I was on the brink at one point in my life when I was going through really bad bullying in middle school. When you're alone with your thoughts, that's the most dangerous place to be, especially when no one's with you. And that's the scary part.
Yeah. And coming forward would be, you'd be viewed as weak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's sad, but it's true.
Right. And, showing emotion with that and opening up about it now, the thing is, and I've said this before, it takes a lot of strength to say, yeah, a real man or woman to say, yeah, you know what, I'm not well right now. It's not, and that's the sad part about it. There's so much strength in doing that. And I wish the system was more catered on the NYPD side to help guys realize that. What you're doing by saying, yeah, I need help in that moment, is the most selfless thing you can do, because not only are you going to help yourself or get the ball rolling to help yourself, you're going to help your family. You're going to help so many people around you who care about you. Because the thing is, and whether it be a friend, whether it be a family member, colleagues in your case, both in your case, we've talked about a few tonight, it destroys a family. The people, and I say family, I don't just mean those who are related to you. I mean, family that you have at work, the friends that you make over the years. I know you think about those guys all the time and just wish, like, why? And you wonder why. I wonder why about my friend that I mentioned to you off air that did it. It just destroys the loved ones they leave behind, because there's always that void. And it's one thing when someone dies of an illness or when one is killed in the line of duty. Yes, it's still tragic, but at least there's a closure to that. There's never a closure when someone dies by their own hand.
Yeah. And again, anecdotally, sometimes it's very sudden. Sometimes, boom, it just happens and there's no rhyme or reason. Right. Other times, I've talked to people, again, off the record, and I've talked to some healthcare professionals over the years. And a lot of times it's like, all of a sudden, the friends are getting a phone call. Hey, we haven't talked in a while. Hey, I really like working with you. like it's almost like this person is saying goodbye at
Saying
that
goodbye,
point.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hey, let's go to dinner sometime. I owe you a dinner. And then so and so says, I heard from so and so. Me too. He just called me. Me too. Again, you don't want to jump the gun, no pun intended, but maybe that person needs somebody to intervene.
Yeah,
And
is everything
hey, I want to make sure
okay?
you're okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not that. I mean, some people just reach out because hey, it's just who they are. Hey, you know what? I haven't talked to these guys in a while. I work with them. I love them. I should reach. And sometimes it's just that. And hey, that's good. No problem with that. But sometimes, hey, is everything okay? And sometimes asking that question is enough to get a guy to open up.
Yeah.
And that's all you want. It's just that's all you want at the end of the day. You'd rather them here than not be here because I mean, listen, you want them. It's not just we want you to be a healthy police officer or a healthy firefighter. We want you to enjoy the rest of your life. You worked so hard, you did so much, you took care of others for many people for many, many years, decades in some instances. Let others take care of you. And sometimes that's hard when you're so used to being the protector.
Yeah, it's so hard. And it's easier today to stay in touch than it used to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just have to pick up the phone and call. Now, like for example, I'm on a text string. I'm a graduate of the 32nd precinct in Harlem. There's like 20 guys on this text string. Now, I'm not saying this is the lifeline for suicide prevention, but you know what? It's a lot easier to stay in touch now with things like that. So these 20 nuts, myself included, go back and forth. It can be quite irreverent at times. And nobody cares that, used to be a chief, used to be a captain. Nobody gives a damn about that. So, but that kind of stuff is an easy way to stay in touch. And maybe even, maybe some little red flag might come from that. Thank God on my string with 3-2, nobody is. But you know what? If somebody sounded a little off, we may say, hey, let's get together and talk to this guy. Anything to stop the tragedy,
Right. And even now when people post, like, it could be an Instagram story, it could be a caption. I mean, even just checking in, replying, and you can do so privately. I had a friend of mine that she posted something. Thankfully, she's fine. But I checked in on her where I said, you okay? And we talked briefly, and just even that simple thing lets you know, hey, somebody cares. Somebody's looking after you. And John Costello, who was a police sergeant in Pennsylvania, and a friend of this program, says my senior guy completed suicide on duty one day before his birthday in 2011. Department decided not to recognize his death as a line of duty death. My belief is the decision might have been based. They failed, or might have been a typo at the end there. And that's the thing, too, in terms of recognizing post-traumatic stress disorder, not only in active duty members, but in retired members, too. Do you think proper diagnosis and proper treatment, and maybe even the encouragement of guys to come over and say, hey, it's okay. You saw some terrible things in those 20, 25, 30 years. Let's screen you, because if there's a legit disorder going on, especially now that you're part of the pension system, you're still, I don't know if you're still under the insurance plan when you retire, let's get you under that banner so that we can treat you. Would that help too in terms of tracking?
Yeah, I think so. And you mentioned the 9/11 stuff before. Nowadays, 25 years ago. And listen, they all back then, and we were all down there. And they did say, is everybody okay? And you got maybe some questions on the way. In hindsight, I think the job could have done more as far as that. Maybe some group session. I don't know. I'm not a counseling trained or anything like that. But in hindsight, I think maybe there could have been more of an effort. But we were trying to get the city back on its feet, and there was a change of administration then. So I don't know. I just think I look back and I say, and I can't link any friends that have committed suicide since 9/11 or because of 9/11. But I think agencies are doing better now, but they probably could have put a better effort into it at that time, I think.
Yeah. And it just, even if without a major tragedy like that, just PTSD across the board, because there was something, the fire department I volunteer out of here in Connecticut for the time being, it's a career department. It's a combination department. It's primarily career, but you can volunteer there as well too. One of the lieutenants does a great job with the annual suicide prevention seminar. He really lays it out in such a wonderful way, where he says, and I love the way he put it one time, it's never just one event. It's little things that kind of pile up over time, to where a call that you did one time and you didn't even think of, all of a sudden one day you're remembering it, and you're remembering how gruesome it was and how much it bothered you. It's never that one event. It's accumulation effect. It's like snow. The snow that we just had recently wasn't dumped on, although it felt like it, wasn't just dumped on us all at once. It was a gradual uptick across the hours that we had that blizzard. And that's another thing too, just checking in, not at once, but even periodically. And I don't know because if you mandate the cops to go to a therapist, the cops sometimes, just being honest, have prepared answers to give the therapist to make sure that they can give the impression that everything's okay, even if it's not. Not all cops, or some will do that because of the stigma attached. But where I was going with that originally is, as we talk with Ed Hartnett here on the Mike the New Haven podcast about mental health tonight. Let me get my train of thought back because I lost it briefly, momentarily. Of course, this happens to me.
I have that effect, Mike. I'm pretty boring. I have that effect on people.
No, but like I was saying, if you can't necessarily mandate someone to have a therapist per se, but I think just periodic, there it was, I got it back now, periodic check-ins to say, hey, everything good, everything all right, you want to talk about it, you want to take a day off, if a mental health day or a vacation week, even something like that, I think will go a long way.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan. I mentioned before, Facebook pages are great. Like I'm also a graduate of the 4-6 precinct. There's a 4-6 Facebook
you work
page.
in some heavy houses, yes.
It's not where you're sitting down at the computer saying I want therapy but it's good. It's a way to stay connected. Precinct reunions, 1013 clubs. I mean, you don't have to have exclusively cop friends, but staying in touch like that, and there's no way to statistically validate it, but staying in touch like that, I think, has to be healthy in many ways, especially if somebody is feeling abandoned or alone or lonesome. And without even saying it, I think that stuff reinforces that, we all graduated from a very noble profession. And we all saw a lot of bad things, but at least I'm with a bunch of other people who understand what I went through. I think that means a lot.
Right. And you're never in the foxhole alone. Rather, you ran into burning buildings, or you chased people with guns, for 20, 25, 30 years, or you worked in ambulance for 20, 25, 30 years. You're never alone. And sometimes it's easy to feel alone, that it makes you forget that, the guy to your left, the girl to your right, they were experiencing the same exact thing. So they, again, kind of going back to what we talked earlier with peer counselors, they can understand because they lived it. They felt it the same way you did. Nothing was different. They were right there in the foxhole with you. So I think it'll definitely go a long way. And I'd love it, especially now with these different organizations that we have. They got to talk to each other. If they're not already, if they are, good. Continue the conversation, continue the dialogue. But there's got to be something that can be put at the forefront, I think, across the board. Is in New York City, put it for all city workers that are on the front lines, our healthcare workers, EMS, certainly the fire service, certainly the police service. There's a lot of trauma involved. And if you know that you can come forward and those organizations exist and there's different resources you can tap into without judgment, can you prevent them all? Stephen Wakshaw talks about it. Unfortunately, you can't prevent them all, but you can prevent a good chunk of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, right now, I would love to find out how and help somebody implement how to track them. Because we know how the treatment programs are out there. We know pretty much, again, we've done the profession has done a very good job, I think, with treatment over the years. Mm-hmm. But identifying the problem, tracking these things as they happen, and then maybe implementing something to prevent them, I think is the way to go. And I'm hoping, again, I'm really grateful for the time here with you and your audience out there. And thank you again, Mike.
Oh, no problem. It's funny because we mentioned Bratton earlier, and this just came to my head. No, we need a broken windows version of this. Honestly,
yeah, right.
It sounds funny, but same way he had broken windows for the NYPD and later on with LA too, and previously before that with transit. If we had a broken window style model for this, where the model, for those of you that don't know, is, and this pertaining to crime fighting, Bill's during his run as NYPD commissioner and LAPD chief would focus on the little crimes because his philosophy was, and he was right then, he's right now. If you enforce the little crimes, it stops the bigger crimes. And sometimes the people who are committing the little crimes were usually wanted for bigger crimes. And that was a huge part of the reason why crime fell. If you notice, and you talked about it, if a guy doesn't sound right or a gal doesn't sound right, if you notice the little things and keep track of those little things, not in a punitive way, but let me keep an eye on that. Let me make sure I check in on that guy or that gal. It could stop the bigger things, getting into drugs, getting into alcohol as a coping mechanism, getting into gambling as a coping mechanism, ultimately, of course, stopping the suicide altogether. A model like that, I think, would go a long way.
Yeah, and like I said, you can't stop all of them, but if we could start tracking them, track them better, get some help for some people, I'm convinced we can stop some of them.
Absolutely. We had a couple, and that was a good almost 50 minutes on mental health. Thank you for that. We had a couple other things you wanted to hit on. So shoot, my friend, let's catch up.
Just so I didn't want to, have it so somber with your audience. Just, thinking about some of the recent events of the last couple of weeks. I do so. It's not a commercial for what I do, but I do some work in the private and the public sector with hospitals and colleges and stuff. And, it just reminded me of the softest of the soft targets,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
really entertainment venues, because by nature, they're welcoming. Bring people in.
Right.
Colleges and schools, again, come in. We want to give us your children. We want to educate them. And then the softest of all, hospitals. In a hospital, again, we just visited, my wife's uncle in a hospital. He's 96 years old. If an active shooter, God forbid, went into that hospital and said, "Let's evacuate everybody," this guy, he's immobile.
Yeah.
So, it just made me think that, with the craziness going on in the world right now, and there's a lot of violent people out there, whether they're radicalized or whatever. It's good for all of us, all the active duty folks, and even retired old timers like me, to be vigilant and to keep our head on a swivel, because look across the country. It was Wisconsin and other places, Old Dominion University,
Yep.
Brown University a while back. It happens anywhere. So I say, obviously be vigilant. Make sure your technology's up to snuff. Brown is a classic example. No disrespect, but that guy's walking around there all the time and not getting picked up on cameras. Cameras are broken. So just be careful out there, and especially with those soft targets.
And nobody wants to be under the microscope after the fact with a million reporters with microphones in your faces wondering, or asking rather, why didn't you do X, Y, and Z thing? Like, even, I'm not going to name the college down here in Connecticut. I have a few retired friends of mine from the New Haven Police Department that, in their retirement gig, are security guards at said college. The security guards there aren't armed. And I'm thinking to myself, why? Especially in today's day and age, why would you, especially guys that have experience in carrying a firearm and know what to do with one, why would we not equip them with such a thing in today's day and age? Even hospitals now. I have two major hospitals in my city, Yale New Haven Hospital and St. Raphael's Hospital, which is under the Yale banner anyway. They have their own police force, fully armed. Most of them retired guys. Southern Connecticut State University, same thing. I'm sure UConn has their own police. Yale University has their own police force, for crying out loud. Same thing. So hardening those soft targets goes a long way. And, again, if you have guys that have that tactical background, just take a day and point out, you have somebody come by. There's companies that that consult in this realm, or even the guys themselves that understand because they did it for so many years. Take a day, walk around. If this happened, we'd be screwed because this is wrong. That camera wouldn't be able to catch this. You have to consider this. What if we had a bomb threat here? What would you do? If you nitpick every aspect of it and you harden it as best as you can, again, the name of the game when it comes to fighting crime, when it comes to mental health, like we just talked about with that, is prevention. Prevention here too, because the bloodshed's on your hands and nobody wants that.
Yeah, and I did years ago with Commissioner Pratt out in LA, we did Project USC, and they have armed. They have like a hybrid model. They have unarmed, they have armed, they have like ambassadors, kind of like, guys directing people where to go and giving directions and stuff.
Yep.
But a very good model and top-notch technology as well.
Right.
Not every place maybe has the resource of a USC, but you think about it, people entrust these colleges and schools with their children, and they want it to be safe. And university policing is quite different than quote unquote traditional policing.
Right.
A lot of times they're as kids maybe a little intoxicated, and instead of locking them up, they're taking them back to their dorm and putting them to bed. But that's the type of policing that's required in a university setting. But a lot of schools I see are very squared away when it comes to their planning, their evacuation planning, their active shooter planning, their messaging when a problem is happening, the lockdown procedures. Some of them are very, very good. Others, and without mentioning names, are very lacking.
Mm-hmm.
And they're taking a chance because if something bad happens, they're not ready for it.
Right. And why would you want to wait? Yeah. Why would you want to wait?
Well, it's sort of the mentality is like, especially like after a Brown University, there's a big uproar. We got to get something done. And then after a while, it kind of dies down. It's a weird dynamic, but it kind of dies down. And then it's almost the mentality is, well, it's probably going to happen somewhere else. It won't happen here.
Right. And then sadly, the way some people in that PR world think is then it'll take the heat off us. Yeah. We just have to ride out this negative PR cycle. It's not a negative PR cycle. Well, it is, but it's not just a negative PR cycle. It's the loss of lives. And my question to anybody who is not prepared for this would be, keeping it specific to colleges, schools, any major landmark in any major city, or even not so major cities, can you look that grieving mother in the eye? And if you can give me a stone cold yes, you're a scumbag and I don't want anything to do with you. But in most cases, if you cannot answer that with a stone cold yes, fair enough. That should be your incentive to fix whatever you have to fix.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of campuses too, they like a model of open campus.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Fordham in the Bronx, and listen, Fordham is locked down. I mean, it wasn't when I was going there, but Fordham is locked down. I mean, you're not getting into Fordham very easily.
Mm-hmm.
Other places, and I get the mentality, they want to be a part of as opposed to apart from the neighborhood. But then your access control is even more important then, because it's not just access control to the complex or the campus, it's access control to each individual building.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a headache. That's a problem, because once they're in that one building, that's it, and they can do all kinds of damage. But how they get in, and maybe people holding the door open for them, whatever. It's like I said, when you look into these places, and I've done some of these projects, it drives you crazy when you see how easy it is sometimes to access some of these buildings, and I'm talking dormitories as well. So it can be a nightmare. It's a potential nightmare if an attack takes place.
And not even that. It's not even a terrorist attack or a mass shooting. Just because, some college kids are stupid. Oh, this guy was messaging my girlfriend? All right, let's go jump him. Let's go beat him up. They go in there and, all of a sudden a fist fight breaks out. You get people, again, they're college students, a little bit too much to drink after the big game on a Saturday night. People are getting rowdy. Fight breaks out. Can you even control that? So even on a lesser level with campus crime, potential for robberies, things like that, and especially in dorm rooms, okay, this guy, listen, he was looking at me funny. Let's go to his dorm room and show him what's what. It sounds silly. It is silly, but it happens. And if you're not even prepared for that, how are you going to stop the bigger things?
And each college, as you know, I'm sure they every year they have to do a Clery report, but from the Clery Act, it's basically you have to report, like a CompStat almost, you have to report every incident that happens. And parents, when they're deciding on what school to send their kid to as a freshman, they get access to this stuff, and they'll look right away. If they're smart, they'll look at the Clery report for the last couple of years at that school, and that's the deciding factor very often in whether they're going to send their kid there or not.
Mm-hmm. And again, you have to look at these things nowadays. It all changed with Columbine, of which the anniversary was or will be in a month or so. I believe April 20th. It'll be 27 years since that tragedy. That changed the whole game. There's been others since, but that was the first time that people in this country took a stone cold look about, sadly, are you safe sending your kids to school, wherever that may be? They took another stone cold hard look after Sandy Hook back in 2012. And it forced a uncomfortable, kind of like what we had with mental health, but necessary discussion where it's like, if this is going to happen, do we have the means to contain? We're going to get a massive response, yes. And in most instances, except for Uvalde, which is a different show for a different day, because that was a train wreck, as we know, sadly, you're going to get an appropriate response. But that being said, do you want to wait until it's too late? Why be able to say this gunman and this always kills me? Because you can't prevent them all, yes. Some people are just maniacs and they find a way. But it always kills me afterwards when there's a press conference of he or she could have killed so much more. Well, they wouldn't have been in a position, even if only 2 people died, still 2 lives too many. They wouldn't have been in a position to even kill those 2 had certain measures been taken. So it's, a lot of CYA in those regards where, the best way to CYA is by doing it before it happens.
Yeah. And it's amazing how the average citizen will jump in. I was at a briefing given by the chief of Colorado Springs, Colorado recently. And there was a mass shooting in a bar out there, a LGBT bar.
Yes.
In 2022, 23. Mm-hmm. And the cops did a great job. The cops got there within a minute, I think 2 minutes probably. Yeah. But what saved the day was, and it's eerie, you see the guy pull up in the car, walks out, automatic rifle, walks in, just starts blasting people right away. Killed 5 people, wounded 18. And he had clearly been there before because he knew a certain room that you walked up some stairs, you go into this room. The room was like pool tables. It was a little quieter. There's no like loud music in there. He went in there and started shooting people. The first guy he shoots is a customer. The guy goes down, and that guy saved the day because he jumps back up. It's all on camera. He jumps back up. He starts wrestling with this guy. If he didn't start wrestling with this guy would have killed dozens of people because people are just running. They didn't know what to do. Mm-hmm. So the average citizen, the average Joe can save the day. In this case, he really did.
Look at Dominion and even look at the synagogue. The armed security there, the guy ended up taking his own life. But the guy got blasted by security. He didn't even get in. He got blasted in his car. And in the case of the Old Dominion shooter, that guy quite literally got beaten to death by the FBI said it. They beat the guy to death. All the ROTC kids. I mean, they didn't even have to use the guns. They just pinned him down and wailed him to the point where he died. So sometimes it is the average Joe. You don't want it to get there, but sometimes, ordinary people do extraordinary things.
Yeah, and we could do another show on the how that guy was even on the street.
Oh,
The guy
yes.
from the
Mm-hmm.
ROTC guy. So,
Mm-hmm.
but that's for another time.
Yeah, that's for a part 3. Well, it was good to have you back, my friend. I'm glad that you reached out. It's good to hear from you. It's good that we're talking about this because it's not easy. And certainly, I know you miss your friends that have succumbed to this. I miss my buddy that has succumbed to this. And, we don't want anybody else to succumb to this. And I said this before, and I'll say it again. And you guys know you watch the show a long time. I'm very open about my past issues with mental health when I was going through bullying in middle school and how I overcame that. My messages are always wide open. My number is 917-781-6189. If you're going through something, if something's bothering you, shoot me a text, give me a call, talk to me. Listen, I don't judge. I know Ed doesn't either. So if there's anything going on, by all means, you're more than welcome to shoot me a message anytime. And I prefer you do. You're never alone. And I mean that sincerely. And I know Ed feels the same way and shares the same.
Mike. And listen, I'll keep you posted on this too. And if whatever progress is being made, I'll let you know.
And if there is progress and you want to come back on the show and talk about it, we'll do a part 3. We'll do as many shows on this as you want to. And I'm not kidding, because it's an important subject matter. And I'd love it if we can continue to stay on top of this. And if there's anything, speaking for both myself and producer Victor, that we can do, by all means, let us know. So
thanks, Vic, too. And I'll come on again, Mike, but do me a favor, at least paint some gray hair or something.
Yeah, I'll have a few artist friends. I'll have them, run a gray streak, next time.
Solid, man. Come on.
I will at the ripe old age of 26. However,
thank you. God bless.
No problem. Stick around. We'll talk off air. Thanks to everybody who tuned in tonight. He left. I was going to talk to him off air. All right. Well, in that case, thanks very much to Commissioner Hartnett for what was a good show, an important show on a very, very important subject matter. I'm going to be away for a day this Saturday, so you're not going to get a show this Friday. And as a heads up, because of the way my job is with mandatory overtime, just to combat that way I don't have to. Oh, he's back. We're going to talk to him off air. I told him not to leave. He's laughing. I'll talk to you off air, Commish. Just to combat that, we're going to move the show to Monday, Wednesday, because I'm off. Monday, I'll be coming off of a double, and then Wednesday, I'm off. So I won't be able to be held for overtime, so it won't interfere with the show. Thank you, Maui. Good to see you, my friend. Hope you're doing well, Nicole, a.k.a. Maui. Coming up next on the Mike the New Haven podcast, since there's no show this Friday with the new schedule that we'll have just for the time being, until I hopefully change it in the summertime. More on that later. We're going to have next Monday, continuing the mental health theme, Joe Badalamante, retired NYPD officer and writer, and also comedian too, will be coming on and talk about his own experiences. And this one's cool. Thanks, Matt. You got to come on the show, buddy. Me and your father were talking about that off air. You got to come on the show, my friend, so I can hear your ESU stories. Legendary sportscaster in New York City, still going strong. It's been on WOR. It's been on WFAN. Len Berman's going to be here. That'll be a pre-recorded interview on Tuesday. We're going to air it next Friday. So Len Berman, looking forward to that one. Now, for those of you listening on the audio side, it's the best song ever written about mental health, and it spoke to me as a kid and still does all these years later. I love REM, and more specifically, I love their 1992 album, Automatic for the People. And they're going to play us out tonight with Everybody Hurts. In the meantime, on behalf of Commissioner Ed Hartnett and producer Victor and all of you and our wonderful audience, I'm Mike Colón. We'll see you next time. And remember, mental health is well. Love all you. Take care.